It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about such an interesting topic as personalized medicine. So there's been a big change in healthcare those past years, very exciting times. So we've really been moving from one-size-fits-all treatments to more personalized treatments, so based not only on like a person profile, but also like predisposition. And this has been made possible because of all the new like data that we can collect, so the vast amount of data that can be like genomics data or microbiome data, like blood tests, or like the different wearables that exist today, environments. And all of that enabled us not just to like diagnose people, but to also like prevent disease and also treat diseases. So I'm very excited to have my panelists here today. And I'm gonna ask you guys to tell a bit more about to the audience what you are doing and the role you're playing in personalized medicine. Jörn, since you have the mic, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So my name is Jörn Bungartz. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Midge Medical, and what we're working on is a device to make it very easy at the point of care, so in the physician's office, in the clinic, or even at the patient's home, to collect a small sample of blood and test it right away, read it into the smartphone, because we think that it's actually one of the critical components when we talk about personalized medicine and making it a common practice, to make it very easy to access the patient's data as a prerequisite to even start thinking about that. And there's a lot of interesting things, of course, that you can read from a patient's blood. So making it very easy to get those readings is what we are working on.
Hi, thank you for being here. At Juniper, we very basically we empower oncologists and clinicians to treat their cancer patients with personalized therapy. That means that nowadays, like, this is really a one-size-fits-all method, particularly using guidelines and also the therapies. And we help them to use the patient data and then to automatically analyze all of that to provide the right treatment for the patient. Basically it's that.
Hi, pleasure to be here. I'm Grishin. I'm Chief Scientific Officer at Nebula Genomics. We're a genomics company, and our mission is to drive the generation of human genomic data and facilitate its sharing by essentially incentivizing people to get sequenced and share the data with researchers. And genomics, I think everyone would agree, is at the core of any kind of personalized medicine approach, because genomics is what makes each one of us unique. And what is necessary to essentially develop any kind of personalized therapies is actually to generate that data and figure out what it is that makes some drugs fail for some people and work for others. So generating that data and making it accessible is our goal.
Okay, thank you very much, Guy, for that introduction. So I would like to talk a bit more about like the quality of that data that all of you are collecting. So Dennis, we're gonna start with you. Before that, audience, I have a question for you. Show of hand, how many of you have your genome sequenced? Okay, just a few.
So really sequenced or just genotyped? Doesn't count.
So I guess the good news for all of you is that the Nebula service is available now. So you can actually go on the platform and have your genome sequence, right?
Right, with a caveat, unfortunately we haven't yet expanded to Europe. So for now it's only in the US, but we are working really hard on having it available very soon to people in Europe.
Okay, so my question for you, so I had my genome sequence like a couple of years ago with 23andMe, and I went on your platform and I saw that I can upload my results over there, and like the people who've done like ancestry of other companies offering the same service, or they can sequence with you. So when you have like sequencing from different companies like that, how do you ensure the quality of the data?
So that's a good question, but I think that in genomics we are in a situation where I think it's not a core problem we need to address, because we essentially don't have the data yet mostly. The data that exists today is mostly, genotyping data. Most people who have raised their hand, I think, just got genotyping. That data is, nice to learn fun facts, but it's not particularly useful to anyone, essentially. So our core mission is not so much, collecting that data, but rather driving the generation of new, high-quality, real sequencing data. And that's also what we're essentially offering through our platform to people to get sequenced at an affordable price and make sure that their data stays in their control. Uploading your data is also possible, as you mentioned, but one of the challenges is that, it's not possible to say, what the quality of that data is. To be able to do that, it will actually require collaborations with the generators of that data. So if it comes from 23andMe, it means 23andMe, and so on. But this is not our goal right now. Our goal is to really generate more high quality data.
Okay, thank you. Adrien?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So you're helping patient to get the best treatment for them, if they have cancer. So the same, you collecting those data from different sources. How are you doing that analysis? And the same, how do you ensure the quality of those different data?
Yeah. This is actually very important for everybody, and particularly for us, because if we don't have right quality, we don't have a right treatment for the patient. But this is the thing which is interesting with all of the genomic sequencing, which is that nowadays the machines are better and better for the sequencing, and then the quality of the data is better and better. And this is something that we can see in the metadata that we get from the clinicians. But also there is still something that we cannot control nowadays, which is the contamination. And sometimes we cannot see that everything is very clean. So this is why in our case, in the future, and particularly for the smaller hospitals which don't have the facilities to sequence their patient data, we want to have partners that we can really trust, particularly regarding all of those wet lab stuff, to make the sequencing and to be sure that the genome which are sequenced are the real ones.
Okay. So, Jörn, when we talked the first time and you told me about your solution, so I thought about that company in the US, Theranos, that we heard a lot about lately. So for those of you who don't know Theranos, it's a startup. They were offering blood tests from a fingertip, just a drop of blood. There was a lot of controversy, and the company ended up closing a couple of months ago. So how are you gonna do things differently, and why is it gonna work in your case?
Yeah, thanks. I'm getting asked that a lot, actually. So pretty much every time that I mention that we are working in this direction, it usually comes up as one of the first questions, and it's really unfortunate for us because there was a lot of damage that was done by this case. So what was claimed there was that, like you said, they are taking out one tiny drop of blood, and they were working on a machine in the background that could extract from that one drop of blood 200 different blood parameters. At least that was the claim. So what we're doing differently is that we are basing our solution on well-established technology. For those who know, it's called lateral flow assays. So these are around for tens of years. You all know them from pregnancy tests, essentially. They work on the same basis. And they are used today in clinical practice, and we're also going to use them for the same purposes, but we're making their application much, much easier. So that's what we're focusing on right now, and then because we're following sort of a lean approach there, the stretch goal, of course, is to go for much more precise testing technology, because again, for those who know, a lateral flow assay can give you semi-quantitative results. So they will not be precise to the digits, but you can use them for a lot of applications also in personalized medicine. But there's a lot of work that is being done to get lab technology much more integrated, much smaller. Lab on chip is the buzzword there. And so we're looking into integrating this kind of technology down the road. But to get something that is working into the market quickly and also learn from the applications as quickly as possible, we're basing our first iteration of the device on very well-established technology.
Okay, thank you. And now I would like to discuss a bit like adoption of your different solution by healthcare professional or by patient. So I know that Nebula Genomics, that was one of your claim, like you wanted more people to have their genome like sequenced. How do you think you're gonna do that? How is it gonna make possible? Why more people are gonna sequence their genome now or adopt your solution, you guys?
Right, so we hope to achieve mass adoption by addressing some of the issues that people have, so eliminating some of the obstacles that have prevented mass adoption so far. And one of those obstacles are the privacy concerns that many people have that have been further enhanced over the past few years by how other personal genomics companies deal with their customers' genetic data. I'm referring to this data being routinely sold without clear consent from the people. So we essentially giving people full control over the genetic data. They can, for example, decline data access requests, see who the researcher who requests data access, what purpose it's supposed to be used, which study, and they can deny those requests. Everything is fully transparent. That's actually what we use the blockchain for, to have such an consent management system that is very transparent and immutable and is very good for documenting consent. And once the data is shared, we're also using several other technologies to make sure that its privacy is protected. So for example, we are keeping the data in place and bringing the computations to the data rather than just letting everyone download your data. And we also are using a number of privacy preserving technologies to keep the data usable, computable, while at the same time keeping it encrypted and protected. So this whole issue of data control, privacy, ownership, that's one thing we're addressing, which I think will drive adoption. And then a second one is cost. So many people just don't see the benefit right now of paying almost 1,000 US dollars or euros to sequence their genomes. So we need to bring that cost down, ideally to zero. And our approach here is that we think, we're convinced that researchers are interested in getting access to this data, and they will be willing to pay the costs for its generation. So by connecting individuals, consumers, patients with research institutions, pharma, biotech companies, we think we can shift those costs away from individual people and towards those companies, and make it, in the end, even a net profitable for people to sequence the genomes, share the data, and support science.
Okay, Adrien, do you want to talk about, because in your case, so the patient is sharing their data with the healthcare professionals who are talking to you. So you're like a third party.
Yeah, exactly.
So how does it work?
Actually, like there is an interesting point that Denise just talked about, which is the trust, which is very important, which is also part of our business in our case, which is that, and this is why GDPR, for instance, is very interesting, because it enforces the trust that people have into giving the genomic data, which there is nothing more personal in terms of personal data, which is very cool. And if there are more companies like that, we'll be even better on pushing like genomic sequencing on the market. But in our specific case, we are talking directly with hospitals, so we have to be sure that there are two parties, the hospital and the patient, who really trust our approach and what we do with the data. Regarding that part, there are two things in our case. We are still in developing our technology, and for that, we just had to talk with hospitals. We are still talking with hospitals, so if there are some people from hospital interested to work with us, yeah, would be interesting. And they are really willing and they're really keen to work with us because we are trying to solve a problem which is really problematic for them. And regarding the patients, in that case, the patient who gave the data in the past, they gave their consent for research purpose, and we are doing R&D. But for later usage, we want to be sure that the patient really understands what we will do with the data, because at the end, we'll get something which is super personal again, like the genomic data, and I mean, this is to help them. And also, having them giving their personal data, the genomic data, would help entire system to provide better accuracy and better results for future patients. So this is really the thing that we want to push forward.
Yeah, so talking about collaboration with healthcare professionals, what we see is that there is a lot of interest in making access to blood measurements easier compared to how it's done today. So for example, for the first test that we'll integrate, which is a CRP, which is an inflammation marker that physicians can use to differentiate if an infection that a patient has a viral or a bacterial cause. And this is, of course, discussed throughout the healthcare community and also on a political level, because prescribing too many antibiotics is one of the causes for antibiotics resistance that we see more and more. So multi-resistant stems of bacteria that's very hard to treat. And so there's a lot of discussion about making physicians do these tests before they are allowed to prescribe antibiotics. And the way that these tests are done today is actually quite complicated in terms of that it binds resources at the physician's office. And if a patient is asked to do that themselves, they are faced with a kit of 6 or 7 components that they have to use in the right order. Piercing the finger, taking the blood out, measuring the blood, mixing it with another liquid, taking a pipette, dropping it onto the test strip. So it's really out of the question, I think, to ask patients to do that in this fashion themselves. So, if you have physicians now that are faced with this option, you have to do it before you can prescribe antibiotics. They are really keen on getting a way to do these tests in a much easier and faster way. So that's the feedback that we're getting. On the other hand, we're pretty early stage, so we're finishing the prototype right now for this. So unfortunately, we can't easily go into clinical experiments, which is one of the issues that we're facing with regulatory landscape as it is right now. Makes it quite difficult to start getting some real clinical experience with the product.
And the topic of a GDPR that we're mentioning?
Actually, we're not facing the GDPR issues as much as probably my 2 colleagues here are, because the idea behind our product is to get the data essentially out of the patient, literally in this case, and feeding it into some data processing system. So either giving it to, feeding it into a practice information system, a clinical information system where it's used by the physicians to drive their decisions, or feeding it into intelligence systems like, for example, ADA that we've seen in the talk before, where this data will be used to drive the decision of an intelligent chatbot, for example. So we're sort of transferring this issue of data protection into this receiving party, if you like. The issues that I was mentioning are more about the medical device regulation. So it's a pretty similar story. As for the GDPR, there has been a new regulation that was put out for medical devices by the European Union. 1.5 years ago it was finalized, and it's coming into effect in 2020. And it creates quite a lot of more hurdles especially for small companies that are working on innovative solutions to get their products into the market. So we still have to see how we want to cope with that, but that's what makes it quite difficult for us and other companies like us.
Okay, thank you. So as I was saying at the beginning, what's the beauty about personalized medicine is that we're not really taking now just like blood tests or just genomics, but we're more like aggregating all the information. So how does it work for you? For example, like Nebula Genomics, if I upload my like 23andMe results on your platform, are you taking other information into consideration? Or what other data do you look at?
So at the beginning, we are mostly collecting self-reported data. So for example, through surveys. So in fact, it's similar to how 23andMe themselves are doing it. But we are looking into expanding into actually using electronic health records mainly to verify that self-reported data. But there are some challenges with working with electronic health records, and those I think are being increasingly addressed over the past years. So this is something that is not yet ready, but will be ready soon, we think. And by combining, self-reported data that is much richer than what you can collect from electronic health records, because you essentially can ask any questions, and then combining it with more limited, restricted data from EHR, so just verify it, and then of course also with actual genomic data, which is our main focus. I think we can generate data sets that will definitely be valuable for researchers for things such as discovery of new drug targets, or doing large-scale genome-wide association studies, or recruiting patient cohorts for clinical trials, genomic-driven recruiting, and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Adrien, same question for you. So when you propose a treatment, which other data are you using? Maybe tell us a bit more about the machine learning algorithm that you're using.
Yeah, basically we focus for the precision medicine, and in the case of the cancer treatment, we really focus on the genomic part, because we can describe most of what is the cancer with the genomic fingerprint, and then in that case taking a look at the mutations in the cancer cells. But it's not all, and this is what's the magical point with precision medicine, that it is holistic, and there is nothing more data-driven than that. Using for development lots of genomic data, or also blood data, or any other thing. And it means that lots of companies have to work together. But in our specific case, we really focus on genomic data, but also on other clinical data, the sex, the age, the histopathologic type of the cancer, but also the location of the tumor, its size. And on a dynamic viewpoint, we have also to understand that there are things that we understand, but we cannot see nowadays. There is something which is called the intratumor heterogeneity, in the case of the solid tumors, which means that, for instance, if you have a tumor in the lung, it's not homogeneous, and there are different clusters with different cancer cells which have different genomic fingerprint. And this is something that we know nowadays, that we understand, but we cannot see practically. Which means that even if we expect that the treatment will work properly for someone, it will not because of that, because of the vascularization of the tumor, etc. And a way to overcome that issue is really to take a look at the treatment story of the patient and then the response to that, which gives us some insight. Doesn't give us really the answers and the total understanding for every specific patient, but give us some insights to be able to iterate even more over that. But yeah, other than that, I mean, right now this is the status at which we are, but we really believe that actors like us or anybody else, whatever precision will be in 10 years, it will be about lots of people and companies working together for the well-being of the patient.
Okay. Jörn, do you want to say something? No? Okay, so I would like as a wrap-up question, and maybe we have time for one question from the audience after that. Each of you, what do you think, what's next for each of your solution company, and what are the challenges that make like execution right now complicated or going forward? Jörn, do you want to start?
Yeah, it's tying into what I already said. So the next steps would be getting something out that is working and building on that. And the challenges that we're facing is the regulatory one that I mentioned, but also the complexity specifically of the German healthcare system in addition to that. So it doesn't end with getting medical device approval so that you are allowed to sell a product, but also getting reimbursement for innovative solutions is quite an issue. We have a chart hanging in the office that visualizes the German healthcare system, and it's enormously complex, with the kinds of meetings that you have there deciding on tiny aspects, and you have to go through quite a lot of them to get some money for an innovative product in the end.
Adrien?
Yeah, I think. I think that you're totally right. It's already societal. Like there is a regulation which is like really lacked. If you take a look at GDPR and even like all of those CE mark regulation, or like the FDA is moving forward with that, but still it takes some time, and like this is why like it's much easier for bigger company to be part of that and to have their medical device on the market easily. But there is also like what we talked about in the adoption and the trust of the people to really use those kind of technology, because nowadays everything is done in like the physician's brain, and machine learning is, we talk about that, but still that's a dream. So we have to make it a reality now.
And do you feel like the tech is here yet?
The what?
The tech, like
The
technology.
the tech is here. Like there is, like everybody agrees on that. But the only thing is that it's very, very slow. And if you take a look, for instance, at the sales cycle in the hospital, we can understand that. Like on average, 12 months for any kind of medical device, with a huge volatility around that. That plus the fact that this is a slow administrative process to have any kind of adoption of new technology. It is very, very, very complicated to have some breakthroughs in that. Even if we all agree, everybody agrees on that, but nobody is adopting that.
Dennis?
So what I think we are facing is both a challenge, but at the same time a great opportunity, because we are operating at this intersection of genomics and blockchain, which are both very emerging fields that just promise to revolutionize everything, change everything. Genomics, for example, I believe will just transform our lives fundamentally, and be like the next kind of revolution comparable to kind of industrial revolution, digital revolution, and next genomics revolution. And blockchain, it's the same. The promise is that it will just kind of change how the internet or just digital data itself will work. So given those things, it's kind of at the moment unclear how things will work out in the end, which means that we need to make the right engineering decisions, we need to make right choices in terms of which technologies to use, and we also need to make the right business decisions. Which is challenging, but at the same time, I think there's just so much opportunity there that we are, very hopeful to just leave a mark and make some progress in this area that we're trying to work in.
And any date, any idea of when you will be available in Europe?
It's I think the question of regulations mostly, and figuring out how we can offer to European citizens what we offer to people in the US without getting in trouble with the EU. We just essentially launched our offer to the US people like last week. So we're just trying to kind of give it some time for the things, just settle down a little bit. And then we will really work hard on getting our service available in the Europe, hopefully by, kind of first half of next year. But also other parts in the world, like Asia, for example, is also very interesting to us.
Okay. I would like to thank my panelists for that very interesting panel. It's very, very exciting field. We're looking forward to what will be happening with your solution in the coming month. Thank you very much.